don't have to do that.
Well, everybody knows the material, so nobody's saying anything, so.
Everybody.
All right, not everybody, okay. We got several questions. Mr. Bays didn't send all the questions, believe it or not. Somebody's actually asking questions. I can't believe it. So here's the first one. This is 3.113/1. So I'm going to do Mr. Bays' homework for him. I'll start with number 1. Probably completing the square because that's what, okay, this is dealing with I. Now when you're dealing with I, basically you're dealing with X, okay? The only thing that you have to remember is what I wrote down the other day is the square root of -1 is I, and I squared is what? -1. So I'll write that down as soon as I pull up my handy dandy whiteboard. There we go. And do that. And pull that back up. There we go. So write down the problem. I'll write it down in case you can't see it. And this is a test question. I put those on the test just to give you points. But -4i, 8 minus 2i. And if I gave you this in pre-algebra, -4x times 8 minus 2x, what would you do? You would distribute. That's going to be -32x plus what? 8x squared. You'll check me. Here, -32i plus 8i squared. Now, the only difference between these two, the algebra is the same. The only difference here is I squared is equal to -1. So therefore, this is -32i plus 8 times -1. And that's -32i minus what? 8. Now you could factor out a -1, but there's no use in it. So your answer is -32i minus 8. Well, if you factored out a -1, you get -1.
32i plus 8.
-1, and then you get 32i plus 8.
Okay, because the answer in the book is like...
Should be this one.
Yeah, it's... actually, I don't think it is.
Well,
I think it's...
that's the way it should be written.
They write it with the whole...
Oh, right here. See the A plus BI? I told y'all about that the other day, I think. I may not have. But I told you that you could write it like this, or you would have to turn it around and be -8 minus 32i because of this right here. They want you to write it in terms of A plus BI. So A plus BI, the I comes second. It's not, these are not incorrect, okay? You cannot mark them incorrect. The only way you can mark them incorrect if the teacher says you didn't follow directions. But mathematically, they're the same.
So, like, because it's telling you to write it in that form, is that why you don't put the square root of I in for I?
Yeah, you would not do that. No. I is I don't understand the question, but I is a clean way of writing the square root of -1. Okay? That's why, the only reason we have I is so you don't write the square root over and over and over.
Right.
That's why you have it. So you would type in right here, you would type in, I think, the -8 minus 32i should be your answer. Yep. So that's a good test question, and like I say, I would put those on a test just to give you some points.
I have a question.
Yes.
When are we supposed to learn about I? Like in algebra?
I is usually in 102.
Okay. What is 102?
Did you learn it in 102 or algebra 2?
I never learned I. Ever.
I don't care about you. But Miss Whiten, I will go over it right quick for you.
Because I was doing the
All right.
homework.
It's really just two things. All right. I is nothing but a logistical variable. Okay. instead of writing the square root of -1 over and over and over and over, you write it as I. Okay? Now, you have a variable. This is a variable that you can work with algebraically. Okay? So I can take I squared, and I can say that's equal to I times I. And I can do I plus 4 times I minus 2, and I can use the what method? The FOIL method. You see what I'm saying? So when you turn it into I, you can actually work algebra problems with a variable. Okay? Now the two things that you need to remember about I is that I, the square root of -1 is equal to I, and I squared is equal to -1. And that's the only thing that you have to remember. Because I is treated like a what? Like a variable, like X. The only time that you have to change something is when you get this, I squared. And when you get an I squared, that means that you have to change it to what?
-1.
A -1. That's the only thing you have to remember.
Mhm.
All right?
Okay,
Now, when you're, go ahead, say again.
Yesterday I was doing the homework, and you know, it can like give you an example if you click the question help or whatever.
Uh-huh.
And it can walk you through an example problem.
Uh-huh.
It said that like I to the first power is I to the second power is -1, I to the third power is I to the fourth power is 1. I didn't know any of that, so
Okay,
I wrote that down.
I'll give you a quick hubrism about that, because when I first started teaching, I ran into that problem with students, and they didn't know how to do it, so I thought up something. It's not in your book, okay? And just write this down. I is a fraction of the class. Just remember, I is a fraction, and 1 is a whole. Okay, I is a fraction, 1 is a whole. And odd is negative, and even is positive, which y'all know that. All right, that's all you have to remember. And I'll show you how to do that. So I to the fourth power. Oops, I can't even write I, that's T. I to the fourth power, take 4 divided by 2, and that's equal to 2. What is 2? Tell me what 2 is. Is it a fraction or a whole number?
It's a whole
So
number.
your answer is 1. Is 2 odd or even?
It's even.
It's even, so it's a positive 1. I to the fifth power, 5 divided by 2. 5 divided by 2 is what? 2 and what? 1/2. What's 2? Or 2 and 1/2? What is that? Is that a whole number or a fraction? Fraction. So the answer is what? I is a fraction. And what is 2? What is 2? Odd or even?
Even.
So that's a positive I. A positive I. So you just take the exponent. Somebody just saw the pattern. Somebody take the exponent. Let's go with 6. I to the 6th. 6 divided by 2 is 3. What is 3?
It's an odd number.
It's an odd number, but what is it? It's a whole number.
The whole number.
So 1 is your answer. Odd means what? -1. And what they're saying is, if you was to take these numbers, and instead of doing I times I times I times I times I times I 6 times, I times I is I squared, I times I is I squared, I times I is I squared. What's I squared? -1, -1, -1. What's -1 times -1? Positive 1. What's positive 1 times -1?
-1.
Instead of doing all of that, you can just do this. Okay?
And you just divide it by 2 like you did over
Divide
here
it by
on the
2
left.
and then match it up.
Okay.
So 13. I to the 13th power. 13 divided by 2 is equal to what? 7 and what? 1/2. That's a fraction. So your answer is I. 7 is odd. So your answer is -I. Now, do you understand?
I do. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's wonderful.
That's dang old communication. It's a miracle what communication does. Mr. Bays, you good?
Yeah, I think so.
Good. Not that I really care. Just thought I'd ask just to make everybody think that I care. Okay? All right, so that's that question. Let's do a nerd, or let's do this one. 3.129/4. All right, express in terms of I. Express in terms of I. So, first thing you do is write the negative 45 in terms of I. What is I? I is equal to square root of what? Negative 1. So 2 minus the square root of 45. I'm going to rewrite that as 2 minus the square root of negative 1 times the square root of 45. And what is the square root of negative 1? I, Hubert. That's right, class. Okay, now you have got it in terms of I, but you're not finished because it's not in terms of perfect squares. All right, now I'm going back to pre-algebra, algebra 1. Okay, so you should be able to break up 45 into perfect squares. 2 minus I, square root of 9, square root of 5. What's the square root of 9?
3.
And now you have 2 minus 3i, square root of 5. Now it says, okay, it does not say write it in any type of answer, so you can write it in that answer. It should be correct. All right, so that's a question on that one. And it all goes back to the two things that I told you. I squared is equal to negative 1. Those two things right there. If you learn those two things, then you should be able to knock out any of the I questions. Let me give you one that you'll see on the test. There's two that you're going to see on the test. I plus 3 quantity squared, or 3 type question. I plus 2 times I minus 6. And then I plus 3 over I minus 2. Now the first thing you do is use your algebra. The first one's shortcut number 1. So if you don't know your shortcuts, then that's another story. So you're going to get I squared plus 6I plus what? 9. Are you done? No, because I squared is equal to what? Negative 1.
Where's 6i coming from?
Shortcut number 1. I don't know what's wrong with this board. It's just going crazy. Okay, plus 6i. Where's the other? Plus 6i. That's better. I thought it was. Plus 6i plus 9. And what is 9 minus 1?
8, Hubert.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. I appreciate it. So 8 plus 6i period. Is that? I got so confused with all the writing. I think that's it. Yeah. So that's your answer.
So you square I Then you add a I and 3. Double it.
Shortcut number 1. I'm going to go over it one more time. A plus B, quantity squared, is equal to A squared plus what?
2AB.
You just answered your question. Here it is. I plus 3, quantity squared. So A is equal to I, B is equal to 3. Plug and chug. I, 3, 3. I squared plus 6I plus 9. Negative 1 plus 6I plus 9. 8 plus 6I. Okay? Shortcut number 1.
Basically, you just distribute.
Say again?
Basically, you just distribute the I.
You just
I
destroy.
use shortcut number 1. That's what you're supposed to use. Okay? And I'm not picking on Mr. Bays, he can take it. But the problem that a lot of students have in algebra is they refuse, not Mr. Bays, but students in general, refuse to learn the shortcuts. They try to revert back to the reverse what? Or the FOIL method, and they try to do the FOIL method through college algebra, college trig, and calculus, and first, second variable calculus, and they can't understand why everybody's finishing the test and they're on number 6. Okay? I'm talking about in calculus. The reason everybody's finishing the test and walking out is because they learned the 5 shortcuts. And you refuse to, and that's why you're sitting in first variable calculus, you're on number 6, and 90% of the class is already finished with the test. Okay? You've got to learn the shortcuts. That's why I showed you the 5 shortcuts the first week of class. Okay? You have got to learn them. If you don't, you might as well just give up. No offense, Mr. Bays. You've got to learn them. I'll go through them one more time. Because I'm a nice guy, even though some students don't believe that, I'm a nice guy.
Hubert,
Yes.
I'll admit, in sitting in pre-cal last year, my junior year, I think my teacher went over the shortcuts and, like you said, we usually don't listen and we don't learn them, and I didn't learn them, and I didn't remember them. So, yeah, I would sit there on a test and try to do the reverse FOIL method.
And everybody was walking out finishing the test.
Yeah, and I was getting more and more frustrated because I didn't understand, so.
Yep, that's the way it happened. And the reason I say that is because it happened to me in college algebra. I would be sitting in there and I would get so mad. I'm like, why the hell are these people leaving? And they were leaving because they had done what they were supposed to. And I didn't. And so, anyway, A plus B, quantity squared, is equal to, I appreciate that, Miss Whiten. I'm glad you're not at the Pendleton campus because they would probably beat you up when you walked outside the door for talking to me. But Miss Shuttleworth gets it every day. But, I'm glad that you're by yourself so you don't get beat up. A squared plus 2AB plus B squared. A minus B, quantity squared, is equal to A squared minus 2AB plus B squared. A squared minus B squared is equal to A plus B times A minus B, and A cubed plus B cubed is equal to A plus B times A squared minus AB plus B squared, and A cubed minus B cubed is equal to A minus B times A squared plus AB plus B squared.
So on the shortcut number 5, if it's A cubed minus B squared.
A cubed minus A.
Huh?
A cubed minus A is a perfect cube.
No, I said A cubed minus B B
Then
squared.
it's not a, then it's not,
Then it doesn't apply at all.
doesn't apply at all.
It has to hit.
You
that
got
exact-
it's got to hit those, yeah. And that's what they make them, especially in calculus. They have these all over the place. You'd have to have x cubed minus 8, and that would be shortcut number 5. X plus 2 quantity squared is shortcut number 1. X minus 6 quantity squared is shortcut number 2.
Wait, why is the first one shortcut number 5? Oh, because 8 is a
8 is a perfect cube. And see, if you don't know your perfect cubes, you're going to be,
Yeah, no, I don't.
SOL. Okay? 1 cubed is 1, 2 cubed is 8, 3 cubed is 27, 4 cubed is 64, 5 cubed is 125. I think 6 cubed is 216 or 256. I always get it mixed up. 7 cubed is 243. 8 cubed is, I don't know. 10 cubed is 1,000. Okay? Some of them I'm hit and miss. But the whole point is you need to know at least a few of them. What if I give you x squared minus 16? Shortcut number 4. And if I gave you x cubed plus 64, shortcut number 5 or 4. So you got to know your shortcuts.
What did you say the x squared minus 16 is? That would be
Shortcut number 3, x plus 4, x minus 4.
See, I didn't learn this either when I was in school 20 years ago.
And I can say I didn't learn them either, and I paid for it. And there's nothing more frustrating. There's nothing more frustrating than going through several tests, and you're the last one on the test, and 95% of the class walked out 30 minutes ago.
As long as I pass, I don't care what.
The whole point is you're not going to pass if you don't learn these, you're not going to pass it. Period. So anyway, let's go back to where we were. All right, so the second one. The second one on the board. No, I don't want to do that. Is the FOIL method. The good old FOIL method. The ones that stubborn people like. They don't learn those shortcuts. Well, you can't do that one with a shortcut. You got to do F was first, outer, inner, outside, inside, last.
Can you pronounce the F?
No, I can't.
Please.
FOIL. I squared minus 6i plus 2i minus 12. You always combine the like terms. I squared minus what? Or minus 4i. Somebody help me out there. Minus 12. And what's I squared? Negative 1 minus 4i minus 12. And negative 13 minus 4i.
See, that just seems easy.
That seems easier to me too.
Because you have accepted it. You have accepted it, and you've basically said, okay, I've got to learn this to pass. You haven't done that with the shortcuts. And until you do that, you're going to have trouble.
It's just hard to unwire your brain when that's how you've done something all your life.
I thought you were a Democrat.
Man,
Progressive,
Talk about math.
change.
Math is supposed to be
Change. You're not
constant.
supposed to concrete in with one thing. Okay? That's how we
That's
learn.
the last math class I
You know I'm not going to let you live that down.
ever in my life.
No.
Math class.
15 years from now, I'm going to walk up to you and just hit you upside the head. All right, so we got I plus 3, so I got to conjugate this because I have a radical in the denominator. You cannot have a radical in the denominator. Now, it's not that big of a deal, but when you're finding the limits in first variable calculus, the first unit, you're going to be doing a bunch of these. All right? So multiply by the conjugate. Conjugate of I minus 2 is I what? I plus 2. It's always the opposite operation. Okay? It's something that helps you remember, and I had a professor that did this, and it sticks in my mind, so if you're offended, go fuss at him, all right? Conjugal visits in prison. What's a conjugal visit? It's where a man visits a woman or a woman visits a man, and that's all I'm going to say. Conjugal, meaning the opposite, okay? Conjugal. The opposite of I minus 2 is what? I plus 2. So, now what do they have on the bottom? What's this? Shortcut number what? What's on the bottom? I minus 2, I plus 2. Shortcut number 3. So that's I squared minus what? I squared minus 4. And then on the top, I really don't care. I plus 3 times I plus 2. Because what do you have on the bottom? What's I squared? Negative 1 minus 4 is what? And I don't care what's on top. The main thing you need to see here is that you're using the conjugate to get a what on the bottom? A number instead of a radical.
So you're just working like this? You're working off of it backwards?
Yeah, backwards, left to right, right to left, doesn't matter.
So you're saying, okay, so if it looks like this, see, I actually took notes of that. If it looks like this.
You didn't?
I just don't get it because I'm going
No,
with
you
the
haven't
formula.
got it. You haven't got it.
I have not got it.
There you go.
I quit, I'm leaving.
There you go. Get your butt out of here. Loser.
So you're just flopping around. So if it looks like this,
Then you got to do it the other way. If it looks like that, you got to go one's factoring and one's multiplying.
Okay.
All right, so that's the answer here, and the top would be I squared plus what? 5i minus what? 6 or plus 6? That's what the top would be.
And the top doesn't have a shortcut.
No, it's the regular FOIL. Okay, so there's your review on I. And like I say, it should be a review. You're welcome. I took time out to do that for you.
Thank you.
That's what it takes, communication. Squeaky door gets grease. Next question. 3.1, 37/6. Okay, got a radical in the what? In the denominator, so you need to fix it. Radical in the denominator, so you got to multiply by, well, in this case, the square root. Now, there's a problem here because, well, it doesn't matter because you're going to get rid of the radical. What they want you to do is get rid of the radical. So the first thing you do is say, okay, I got to multiply by something to make the bottom a perfect square. Negative 448 over square root of negative 64. So I got to multiply the top and bottom by the square root of negative 64.
Here I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So that's an even square root. 8 times 8 is 64, so why couldn't you just put 8i on the bottom?
Well, you want to get rid of that's not what what does the directions say? They're wanting you to divide. They do not want you to put it in terms of I, because what's going to happen is you're just going to get a number in the denominator. What they're saying here is, I don't want a radical in the denominator. I want you to get the radical out of the denominator.
Okay.
Okay? If you change it to 8i, you still have a radical in the denominator. It's just square root of negative 1. So you're really not answering the question. Okay? But if it said right in terms of I, then you would. But it doesn't say that. When you see a radical in the denominator like this, they want you to get rid of it. If that was the square root of negative 2, you'd multiply by the square root of negative 2 over the square root of negative 2. If it was the square root of star, you would multiply by the square root of star over the square root of star. Because the square root times the square root, what happens to the square root when you multiply it by itself?
The symbol goes away.
It goes away.
It turns into...
Okay? So here, we're going to have, and I'm going to write it in black, this, you're going to have negative 64 on the bottom. Well, actually, you won't, because take negative 64 and negative 64 and square it. What do you get? Take 64 and 64, multiply it in your calculator. Somebody do that. Calculator drill team. What do you get? you're going to get a positive what? Oh my God, people, it shouldn't take that long. Take your phone and get a calculator on your phone. It's not that big of a deal. Can anybody do that? Good gosh.
They want us to have our phones out in class.
I didn't say nothing about that. What's negative 64 times negative 64?
4,096.
4,097?
96.
All right, and if you take the square root of 4,096, you're going to get a positive 64. Okay, everybody understand that? What is negative 64 times negative 64? 4,096. The square root of 4,096 is 64.
So if you multiply a negative square root by itself and then multiply it, it's always going to be a positive that number.
Well, what's square root of negative 2 times square root of negative 2? What's negative 2 times negative 2?
4.
Square root of 4 is?
2. That's what I'm saying. So if it's over that, like in front of your problem right there, then the answer is always going to be just what is under.
Should be 64. It should be the positive, yes.
That's called the radical.
Yeah. And then the top comes out to be square root of, somebody take 448 and multiply by 64.
28,672.
Say it one more time.
28,672.
And you can work with that. Main thing is they want you to get 64 in the what you call it, but we can. And okay, they say type the answer in forms of A plus BI, so they're telling me now they're telling me they want I, like you said,
Yeah.
Miss. Okay, I missed that, Miss Shuttleworth. You probably are correct now that I see that. So that's a big number. So I'm going to put this square root of 28,672. Okay, that's if you were just rationalizing the denominator. Now, since they've got the answer, okay, I don't agree with the way this question, the directions of this question. The directions of this question should say write in terms of I, because the answer right here says what? I mean, the directions on your answer say what? Write in terms of I. So I disagree with this right here. It should say write in terms of I. But anyway, I'll do what like Miss Shuttleworth said. Square root of negative 1 multiplied by 448 over square root of negative 1 multiplied by 64. Now, on the bottom, we're going to have, or whatever, we're going to have, let's see, square root of 448 I over 64 is 8I. And we've got a radical in the denominator, so I'm going to multiply by I over I. This is a weird question. So I'm going to multiply by I over I. And that's going to give me the square root of 448 times what? I squared over 8I squared. And that'll give me 448I, or 448 negative square root of 448 over negative what? Negative 8. And a negative divided by negative is a what? Square root of 448 over 8. So I really don't know which question they're asking. It said put in terms of I, but you're getting rid of I.
Check it out.
So I have no idea what they're asking.
Look, here's the problem.
Hmm?
Here's the problem and the answer. That's not it.
What?
The answer is the square root of 7.
I have no idea how they got that.
I don't either.
Unless they just divided. There's one other way they got it, and that is 448 divided by 64. Take your calculator and divide 448 by 64 and see if you get 7. That's
Yeah,
probably how they got it.
So then we're not using shortcuts, we're not doing anything except just straight up dividing.
Well, like I say, they've got two conflicting things here. They got to divide, and then they got in terms of VI. So I don't know what they're asking. So the square root, what's 448 divided by 64?
7.
Okay, so you've got the square root of negative 448 over the square root of negative 64, which is equal to
Square root of 7.
the square root negative, well, 448 divided by negative, that'd be a positive 7.
Yeah, that's the answer.
That's the answer.
Why is that the answer?
Because positive, well, that's just signs. Like signs, negative divided by negative is positive. A positive divided by negative is a negative. A negative divided by a positive is a negative. And a negative divided by a negative is a positive. You know, like signs are positive, unlike signs are negative. But they should not put divide and then put that in the directions. That's a misnomer. That's conflicting. Because there's several different ways you could do that problem. You still get, if I was to take the square root of 448 divided by 8, they probably would get 7 or something. I don't know. You probably would, but that question is not a test question. Okay? But that's a good question. I'm glad you sent it. The answer is square root of 7. There's several different ways you can do that problem.
Do that on the calculator.
What?
I can't.
Well, you know, take 448 divided by 64.
You don't worry about the square root of it, or is it?
People, okay, now y'all are starting to get on my nerves, okay? All right, the square root things should be in pre-algebra. Y'all are forgetting everything, okay? The square root of A over B is equal to the square root of A over the square root of B. And you just take A divided by B and take the square root of it. So in this case, since now that we've decided that this does not mean this, just erase this and just divide square root of negative 448 over negative 64. And what is negative 448 over negative 64? 7. Okay, negative 448, just do that in your calculator, because this is equal to this, so this is equal to this. If I have a radical, two radicals in the numerator and the denominator, then I can write it as one big radical, A divided by B. That's pre-algebra review right there, so y'all should remember that.
So will all of them be like that? Just divide?
Well, if it says divide, then ignore this right here. Okay, because that throws you off. When it says A plus BI, that means, okay, we got to write it in terms of I. And that throws you off, so just divide it. That's not a good test question.
There's just different, it seems like there's different rules for different problems when it comes to this site, and the way you're teaching us, it just doesn't compute sometimes.
Well,
and it's getting me really
well,
frustrated because I don't.
That question, you have a right to be frustrated because that question has directions that say this, and then directions for the answer that says do something different. So you have a right to be confused on that one. Okay? And I usually don't give you leniency, but in your case, yeah. All right, here's one. 3.2, number 5/1. Test question. Why is it a test question? Because it's complete in the square. Anything complete in the square is a test question. And it's one that counts. So x squared minus 2x minus 7 is equal to 0. So take off. Now, on a scale of 1 to 10, this is a 1 or a 2. So everybody in this class should be able to do this one. If you have a question, now is the time to ask it on this type question, because that's where I started. I started with this type question.
P of x and f of x the same thing.
Don't worry about the p of x. That's the least of your worries. You need to complete the square. So that means you got to move what? Move what? 7. Or speak up back there. He's mad at me. He's not gonna talk to me.
Bless you.
Y'all quiet back there, Mr. Booth. Don't be quiet on me. X minus x squared minus 2x plus blank is equal to 7 plus blank. Now what? What's the second step? After you move C, what's the second step? Divide what?
B.
Divide B by 2 and
Square it.
square it. Thank you. So what? Okay, get your calculators out. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 1 squared is 1. And now you got shortcut number 2. X minus 1, quantity squared, is equal to 8. Now you have the vertex. The vertex is equal to what? Vertex is positive 1, comma, negative 8. You can also write it in intercept form. F of x is equal to x minus 1, quantity squared, minus 8. And remember, I put this in a little cloud because sometimes they will ask you to put it in that form. The y-intercept, we said the y-intercept is negative 7. So now I just got to find my x-intercepts. So let's bring it over here. And x minus 1, quantity squared, is equal to 8. Take the square root of both sides. X minus 1 is equal to positive or negative. Well, if the square root of 9 is 3, what do you think the square root of 8 is? 2.9, Hubert. That's right, class. So, x equals positive or negative 2.9 plus 1. And what's $2.90 plus $1? $3.90. And you owe somebody $2.90 and you give them $1. What do you owe them? You owe them $1.90.
90 cents.
You owe them $1.90. Yep. So there's your x-intercept. So let's see if everything lines up. Our vertex is negative 1, or positive 1, negative 8. Our y-intercept is negative 7. 3.9, that's close to 4.
It doesn't
And
work
negative
unless you boop it.
1.9. What?
Said it doesn't work unless you say boop every time you do it.
Yep. There you go. What's the domain? All real numbers. What's the range? The range is negative 8 to infinity. Decreasing from negative infinity to 1, increasing from 1 to infinity. All right, who's got a question?
You put square x minus 1 to take out that x minus 1 quantity squared. That way
Yeah.
you can get them out. So
Yeah, right here, it took it out. Right there is where it took it out. And like I say, I only use 2.9 because my goal here in this section is for you to sketch the graph. So if you sketch the graph, that's, that's all I care about. And this pen is not going to get within 300ths of a 3,000ths of a, I don't care about that. And your pencil is not going to get exactly. So 2.9 is close enough for government work. Now on this test, I want you to realize, on this test, what does completing the square make up? Completing the square makes 90% of your test. So don't worry about the stuff that we did a while ago. Okay, the I thing, that's okay, but 90%, you need to know how to complete the square.
on that, will it have to be specifically 8 squared or 38? If it's not 2.9, what if it's like 2.8 and they mark it wrong or something?
I'm not worried about that. Besides, remember, this is I'm going to grade this test. Remember? This is in class. All right, let's do a nerd. I'm going to let y'all do one. I'm just going to type in, and I'm going to let y'all do another one. And this is a 1 to a 2, so everybody should be able to do this one. If not, you need to be asking what? Questions. And look what they got. X minus 1, quantity squared, minus 8. They're wanting right here, see? X minus 1, quantity squared, minus 8. General form. All right, the vertex is what? We said it was what? 1, negative 8, is that what that is? So we're going to type in parentheses, 1, negative 8. Of course, all I want is a graph. I don't want all this. And graph. So let's see if I can do this. The vertex is 1, negative 8. And what does it ask for now? Click plot a point on your parabola. So I want 3.9. What about the y-intercept? Negative 7. Save. Check. I got it right. All right, now y'all do this one. I'll write it for those who can't see. So if you learn how to do complete the square, you're going to be all right. X squared minus 4x minus 3 is equal to 0. What do? Move C. X squared minus 4x plus blank is equal to 3 plus blank. All right, get to it. Half of 4 is what? 2. 2 squared is 4. Same process every time. Just divide it, add it on both sides. Remember, this is 90% of the test, so if you can do this, you can do the test. Half of 4 is what? 2. 2 squared is 4. So you have 4. And that's shortcut number what? Number 2. Shortcut number 2 gives you x minus what? X minus 2 quantity squared. And then with that information, you should be able to graph it, or the vertex. So x minus 2 quantity squared is equal to what? 7. And what's your vertex? Vertex is 2, comma, negative 7. Go ahead and write it in the way that they want it. F of x is equal to x minus 2, quantity squared, minus what? 7. Now I'm going to solve it over here. X minus 2, quantity squared, is equal to 7. Take the square root of both sides. X minus 2 is equal to, okay, let's do the square root of 4 is 2, and the square root of 9 is 3. Half of 4 to 9 is what? 2. So that's going to be 6.5 is 2.5, so 2.6. Somebody take the square root of 7.
It's 2.6.
Nailed it. That was my guess. Huh.
2.6. And then subtract x is equal to positive or negative 2.6 plus 2. What's 2.6 plus 2?
4.6.
What's negative 2.6 plus 2?
Negative 0.6.
And there's your 2 x-intercepts. All right, we're gonna do another one. I'm just gonna plot this in. I'm not gonna, I know I'm right. We're gonna do another one. Oh my Lord.
You know, there's like 5 questions for one.
Tell me about it. I think it would have been easier just to type it in. Lord have mercy.
I don't think that's right.
Thanks. I only got to type it in 5 times. All right.
One more time. You almost had it right. Just move around.
All right. Try that one. X squared minus 2x plus 15, or minus 15. And then we'll move on to the other question. Hopefully it'll be a little bit different. So x squared minus 2x minus 15 is equal to 0. What's the first step? Move C. And half of 2 is 1. And 1 squared is 1. So you're going to add 1 on both sides. X minus 1, quantity squared, is equal to 16. And go from there. What's the vertex? Positive 1 and negative what? 16. Positive 1, negative 16. That's your vertex. And then we got f of x is equal to x minus 1, quantity squared, minus 16. And that's probably the way they want it in the answer right there. They're going to want this part right here. And then what's the square? Now this one's easy. What's the square root of 16?
4.
So x minus 1 is equal to positive or negative 4. X is equal to positive or negative 4 plus 1. What's 4 plus 1?
5.
5. And negative 4 plus 1?
Negative 3.
3.
So let's plot this one. So negative 1 or positive 1, negative 16. What's the y-intercept? Negative 15. What's the negative 3 and positive 5? That's it.
The y-intercept is always C.
Yes, the y-intercept is always C. That you got it correct. There it is. Any other questions? All right, let's try another one that was sent. That's 3 good ones right there that could be on the test.
Start to catch on. I don't know if it's because of my teacher. I think it might be me.
No, it's you. It's not the teacher. Teacher sucks. All right, 3.221/4. Let's see what this one looks like. Okay, this one is already done for you. You don't have to do complete and square. This is a good test question. I will put these on the test. So all you got to do is tell me what the vertex is. What's the vertex? Now remember, it's written in general form. Okay? The way that you're used to seeing it's like this. X plus 2, quantity squared, is equal to 4. That's the way you're used to seeing it. And then you go, okay, f of x is equal to x plus 2, quantity squared minus 4. Okay, remember we're going backwards. They're giving you, they've already done completing the square. So they're giving you this. And I told you that if you get it in this form, you take the opposite of this, and you just bring this what? Down. So it's going to be -2, comma, -4. Now let's do it the old way. Take the opposite of this and take the opposite of this. You're going to get the same thing no matter what. Okay? You just got to be careful. When they give it to you like this, you've got to remember, okay, that's general form. That's what Hubert told us to write it as right there. And you take the opposite of this and you just bring this down. This is the way you get it before you get this. And we're going backwards because they're just giving you, I'm trying to help you out here. They've already done completing the square.
The best thing on that
They've done it.
situation is backwards.
Yeah. And of course, there is the vertex, -2, -4. Okay? I don't know if they're going to ask you anything else after this. Let's see what they ask you.
It says A through F.
A through F?
7
Good
questions.
gosh.
One question.
How many
7 questions.
How many letters are there in the
What
alphabet?
is that?
Okay, I will not ask you an A through F question, okay? To me, that's ridiculous. All right, I'll ask you to find the vertex, but that's ridiculous. All right, I tell you what, I think I know where they're going with this. So let's go ahead and type in -2, comma, -4.
Oh, no.
Domain and range. Domain is all real numbers. The range is from -4 to what? So the domain is all real numbers. So that's going to be dang old that, and that. And you put a negative in front of that one. Range is from -4 to infinity. Bracket -4 to infinity. So all of you should know this. I mean, this stuff right here. Next, give the equation of the axis of symmetry. What I tell you, that the line of symmetry always goes through the what?
Middle.
The -2. It always goes through the x, the -2. So that's going to be x is equal to -2.
You're killing it right now.
Give the largest open interval over which, okay, increasing and decreasing. Where is this increasing? From -2 to what? Infinity. So from -2 to infinity. Okay, I can't type either. -2 to infinity. And then where is it decreasing? From -infinity to 2. From -infinity, comma, to what is it, -2? And I have no idea what they're going to ask the last question. Okay, the vertex, I think everybody should know this. What does it look like? Does it look like a bowl or does it look like a mountain? Okay, on a bowl, is there a vertex? Is the maximum or minimum on a bowl? Minimum, it's called the bottom. So everybody should get that. I didn't even think to ask that question. All right. Now, there's something else you can do on this problem. I want to show you that. Really?
You ain't done yet. Come on.
The corresponding minimum value is the vertex. -2. I will not ask this question unless y'all want me to, but this is too tedious for me. -4. What do y'all think? Okay, I don't know what it's asking.
It's only the -4.
Okay,
She knows.
she's done it like 5 times. Okay, now I'm gonna show you this, and I don't know what that
was actually right, and I didn't get it mixed
Was that
up.
somebody laughing? All right. So here is. It must have been somebody at the Pendleton campus. Let's go with x + 2 squared minus 4. I'm going to show you a trick. What is this? Shortcut number 1.
Oh.
All right, now expand that. What would that be? X squared plus 8x, or 4x, you're right, 4x, plus what?
4.
4 minus 4. And what happens to what happens to these two?
They cancel each other out.
And that gives you f of x is equal to x squared plus 4x. So the function, this blue graph, that's the actual function of that blue graph. What did I do? Instead of going from the equation to completing the square, I went backwards and took completing the square and turned it into the what? The equation. That's just for your information. If I show you that, to go from here to here, some of you might can put, the two together. I don't know if you don't. That's no big deal. All right, let's do a nerd. Even though it's A through F, let's do one more. And then we'll go back to completing the square. Remember, we got all weekend to work on completing the square. We've got Monday to work on completing the square. I just want to make sure you know how to do completing the square. Okay? I don't want you to get discouraged, because that's not what I'm here to do. I kid about it, but that's not what I'm here to do. You're going to learn it. Mr. Gould, he's even learning it. Okay? If he can learn it, then come on now. Anybody can. All right, so let's do this one again. Or I'll tell you what, let me just make up one. And that way y'all can start it from scratch, because I already covered. Say if you send me homework questions, I go over them. Okay? So
Is long division going to be on the test?
not this one, not this class test. I'm not worried about that right yet. Okay?
Okay.
So let's go with f of x is equal to x squared minus 4x plus 6 equals 0. Okay, of course I don't worry about that because you don't need it. So what I do first? Move the 6. All right, I'm going to let y'all finish it. I'll give you a hint. Half of 4 is 2, 2 squared. Heck, no, it rained. Hang on, Pluvio 5.
Yeah, that's not the hair, man.
Oh, yeah.
Hair's all fluffy, so.
Well, I don't know how it is not to have perfect hairs. Only a few of us are born with perfect hair.
Did you watch the Texas game up home?
No, I didn't watch that one.
You didn't watch it? Oh,
The
my.
only one I watched was Kentucky and or Texas A&M, and I watched the Florida LSU game, and I couldn't believe they beat LSU.
I didn't see it coming.
And I also wasted $65 on McGregor.
Ha! You see him get jumped though, dude.
Did you see that? Oh yeah, that's right. You were too busy being domestic god with little G. Okay. Half of 4? 2. 2 squared? 4. Now, most of y'all should be able to get that far by now. We've done, 13, 15 problems? So most of you should be able to get that far. Except if I give you a fraction or whatever. We ain't talking about that right now. All right, this is shortcut number what? It's either 1 or 2. Which one is it? Number 2. I heard somebody say it. Was it Mr. Good? -6 plus 4 is?
-2.
At that point, you know what? Know what? No x-intercepts, because I don't have a negative over here to make that a positive. So this right here, well, we'll get to that in just a minute. What's the vertex? The vertex is 2, comma what? 2.
2.
Our function f of x is equal to x minus 2 quantity squared plus 2. And again, that's that little okay. Now let's finish it. Take the square root. Uh-oh, what's the problem? Can't take the square root of negative, Hubert. So that tells us can't take square root of a negative, therefore no x what? No x-intercept, Hubert. But I'm going to ask you to write it in terms of I, because I'm trying to make you fail, okay? So, I changed the square root of negative 2 into the square root of negative 1, square root of 2, and that's going to be x minus 2 is equal to I times the square root of 2, and x minus 2 is equal to, or, I'm sorry, I got to bring the 2 over. Oh, it's the drugs. No, it's that cup. That's my solo cup over there. I'm not smart enough to bring a red solo cup. I bring a see-through cup. X is equal to I square root of 2 plus 2. Now, why do we have to write it like this? Because you have to be able to write it in terms of I. That's why. You didn't have to bring me a drink. That's fine. Am I not what? Why? You want me to kick them out? No, they're still in here. I'm sorry. I mean, what time's class over?
11.
No. See there, you're giving Mr. Bays a reason to leave.
5 minutes.
5 minutes. Okay. We'll go ahead and call class. Now, what y'all need to do today, you need to work on homework. You've got 3 sections of homework. All right? All of them pertain to what?